Okay, this is the short introductory lesson on some of the statistics concepts. The first thing we're going to talk about is the different types of data. There's two main types we're going to be dealing with, discrete and continuous. Discrete data are things that you can count. Things you count. So for example, a number of cars in a parking lot, or how many times you send a text message. The things you can count are considered discrete data. Things you measure are considered continuous data. So like how tall you are, how long it took you to do something, weights, volume, any type of measurement is considered continuous data. And we're going to treat the two things differently, so you have to know what you're dealing with. Is it something you counted, which is discrete, or is it something you measured, which would be continuous? There are different types of graphs you're going to be dealing with. The first one being a bar graph, which you will have seen for many years. Okay, this is perfect for discrete data. Then you have a circle or a pie graph, which is perfect for parts of a whole or percentage type data. You have histograms, which are like bar graphs, but there's no gaps between them. That's because you have intervals that are along the bottom, along the x-axis. This can also be used for some continuous data as well. And line graphs, which are also perfect for continuous data. Okay, so you have different types of graphs, you have different types of data. The next thing you're doing is kind of how to organize data. So you're going to deal with different types of frequency tables. You have a regular frequency table, which frequency means how often something occurs. You have a cumulative frequencies, which is kind of like a running total. So once you get counted for, you're always going to continuously be counted in that, and we'll do an example of that. And the last one being a relative frequency, which is a percentage or a fraction of the whole. And then you also have to ask whether you need to group data or not. Grouping was setting up like intervals of 0 to 5 or 5 to 10, 10 to 15, setting up intervals. Generally you do that if you have continuous data. Continuous data, you definitely need to group it. Or if you have a large range in your data, then grouping it will become very beneficial. If it's not continuous, it's just discrete and the numbers are relatively condensed into a smaller margin, then you might just, a normal frequency table will probably work. Okay, so a couple of examples to illustrate these things. The first one, I have just a series of discrete numbers, okay, and they're all relatively similar. You have the smallest numbers being ones and then goes up to 6 as being the highest. So we can just set up a basic frequency table for that. So when I set up my frequency table, I want to have x values, x being the variable I'm kind of keeping track of. And I had 1, 2s, 3s, 4, 5s, and 6s being my possible numbers. The next thing I want to have is the frequency, as in how often do they occur. So I have 1, 2, 3 number ones. I have, and I can cancel them out as I go, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 number twos. Again, cross them out as you go, it helps. I have, just do a light cross out so you don't completely, in case you have to go back, you haven't completely messed up the question. Number threes, you have 1, 2, I only have 2 number threes. Fours, I have 1, 2, only 2 number fours as well. Fives, 1, 2, 3 fives. 2, 3, and I only had 1, 6. Okay, so you have your x value, you have your frequency. Now sometimes you want to do is what's called sum them up. And that means you're going to add them all up. And this is a symbol for sum, which means add everything up. So if I want to sum up my frequencies, I have 7, 9, 11, 12. I have 15, which means I had 15 numbers going along here. Okay, that's just something you might want to do. Then you have the next type of frequency you have was a cumulative frequency. And we use CF to stand for cumulative, and that is kind of like the running total. So it's once you get the number gets counted, you're just going to add on the new amounts up until you end up with 15 at the end, or whatever your total was. So I had 3. So that means there's 3 values that were 1 or less. Then I want to add on the new number, which was 4. So add on. So that means I have 7. Add on the 4. So that means there's 7 numbers that were 2 or less. I want to add on the next 2. So I have 9. That means there was 9 numbers up here that were 3 or less. Add on the next 2, which gives me 11. Which means there are 11 numbers that were 4 and less. And you see the pattern. So add in the new number, add the new number, and I should up with the 15 because there are 15 numbers that were 6 or less up here. The last type of frequency is your relative frequency. And that is, can be either a percentage or a fraction out of the total. So I had 3 out of 15 that were number 1. I had 4 out of 15 that were number 2. I had 2 out of 15 that were 3. 2 out of 15 that were the number 4. I had 3 out of 15 that were number 5, and I had 1 out of 15 that were 6. So you have 3 different types of frequencies. You have your regular frequency, how often does it occur? Your cumulative frequency is a running total, and your relative frequency, which is a percentage or a fraction out of the total. The second example here is where you have a larger range of numbers. So I have numbers going all the way from 5 being the lowest all the way up to 36 being the highest, and they're all kind of mixed up. So it doesn't make sense for me to do a table that goes literally from 1 to 36 going all the way down. So I'm going to put them into groups. So my groups I decided to do, you can choose different intervals to go as long as it's not too big or too small. I went by tens. So I set up my intervals, 0 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30, 30 to 40. The next one I'm going to do, and it's very important for when you set up these groupings, is you do the midpoint. 5, 15, 25, 35. The midpoint I'm going to do, and that's going to be called my X. I'll explain in a later video why you do the midpoint. Then the next thing after that is your frequency. How often does it occur? So how often do I have a number between 0 and 10? Well, I got 5, and I got the 6. So I had 2 of those numbers between the 0 and the 10. Okay, what about the 10 to 20? How many do I have there? Well, I get the 11. I get 15, I get the 18, I get the 17. So I had 4 of those numbers. Then the 20 to 30. Well, I have a number 30, so is that going in the 20 to 30 or 30 to 40? It's actually going to go in the later one, so I don't need to worry about that yet. So numbers that are in the 20s. 25, 29, 28, so 4, 5. I had 5 numbers. And then the 30 to 40s, that's where the number 30 will get included. It gets included in the later one. Not 20 to 30, it goes into the 30 to the 40. So that's 1, 2, 3. Okay, and then I can, again, if I wanted to, I could sum up. See, I had 6, I had 9, I had 14 numbers in total. Oh, I forgot, 1, 2, 3, yep, I think I had them all. Then you could do your cumulative frequency. Okay, so I started with 2, add the new number on 6, add the new number on 11, add the new number on 14. 14 meaning there's 14 numbers that were 40 or less. And then you could do your relative frequency, which were your percentage of the whole, using your original frequency number as your basis. And there you go, fractions, or it could go as percents, and that's fine. And when you go to graph, if you're using a relative frequency, that's where kind of a pie graph or circle graph will come in. This is a short little lesson on some of the things you're dealing with statistics. Thank you very much.